Hello, I'm Kurma and welcome. In this series, we're going to show you how to prepare a wide variety of international vegetarian cuisine from over 30 countries. And in this edition, we're going to show you how to prepare a home-style lunch consisting of home-style tomato soup, vegetarian shepherd's pie, and steamed cauliflower salad with green mayonnaise. So let's begin. You know, tomato soup is probably one of the world's most well-known soups, but the recipe I'm going to show you now for a real home-style tomato soup makes the canned variety a pale into insignificance. And in keeping with today's trend towards light meals, it doesn't have any cream in it. It's very, very light, very simple and very delicious. It's wonderful served hot with crusty bread rolls. Let's have a look at our ingredients here for this simple home-style tomato soup. Firstly, we've got 10 medium-sized tomatoes that were blanched and peeled and coarsely chopped. We've got 2.5 cups of light vegetable stock, a lovely homemade batch, which is always best. And we've got 3 tablespoons of butter, 1/4 teaspoon of yellow asafoetida powder for a lovely savoury flavour, 1/2 teaspoon of brown sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of freshly ground black peppercorns. We've got 1/4 teaspoon of dried basil, a tablespoon of plain flour, and a tablespoon of chopped fresh parsley. You see, very simple ingredients, but oftentimes simple is best. Well, the first thing we have to do is to start off by melting a tablespoon of butter in our pan over here. So we're going to turn on our flame, pop in 1 tablespoon of butter. And when the butter all melts, let's add our yellow asafoetida powder, one of my all-time favourite ingredients. I pop it in practically every recipe, as you might have noticed. Stir that up. Now let's add our tomatoes. Lovely big juicy tomatoes. The big and juicier the better for this dish, of course. Let's add our little bit of brown sugar, like so. A little bit of brown sugar is always nice to add to tomato dishes to counteract the sourness. And our salt, pepper and basil. Like so. The dried basil is stronger than the fresh basil, so if you're using fresh basil you can use about 3 or 4 times as much. Let's stir it all up. We're going to let this come to the boil and we're going to turn it down to a simmer for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to add our vegetable stock and bring it to the boil. Now our tomatoes are simmering away. Let's add our vegetable stock. Now I'm going to bring this to the boil, reduce it to a simmer, and I'm going to come back in 15 minutes to continue on with the rest of our home-style tomato soup. Okay, you tomatoes, let's have a look here. Certainly very steamy in there. And those tomatoes are looking very, very nice. Nice and soupy. Okay, let's now turn off our flame. Let's put on my tomato straining gloves here. Turn off the flame and pour it through our sieve. Every last drop of it. Now we're going to mash our tomatoes through our sieve, collect all the lovely juice. I'm beginning to see the tomatoes again. The fog's clearing. I'm going to mash my tomatoes until all that's left in the colander here is just the skins and a few other bits and pieces, and all of the lovely puree is inside the pot. Well, this is about as much as I can squeeze out of our sieve. There's usually a little bit hiding underneath. Yes, here we are. Let's scrape all that in, and we've got our lovely tomato soup ingredients. All we need to do now is to add our thickening paste. There we go. Let's put that aside. That's it with the mashing stage. Now we're going to rearrange the decks here a little bit. I'll take my tomato mashing gloves and put them away till next time. Let's pop our pot over here. Bring in our little pot. Now we're going to melt some butter saute some flour, make a thickening paste called a roux, and we're going to add our tomato puree, bring it to the boil, and it's done. So let's turn on our back flame here, a nice little flame, right, and pop in our butter. This is a traditional French method of melting butter and adding a little bit of flour to thicken your soup. Now, this is important. You have to turn off the flame at this point. Add the flour. Stir to make a paste, like so. Okay, on with the flame. Now let's add our tomato puree to our butter and flour. And we're going to get every last drip of puree out of the pot, like so. Now we simply have to return this to a boil and add our parsley, and the soup is done. While our soup's coming back to the boil, let's add some fresh parsley. Stir it in for a lovely green effect. And there it is, a hot steaming pot of home-style tomato soup. Just a little dash more fresh parsley on top for garnish. Now all we need is the crusty bread rolls. Those of you of Anglo-Saxon origin, like myself, may be familiar with the non-vegetarian origins of our next dish. We're making a vegetarian version of the famous shepherd's pie. When we serve this at Gopal's restaurant in Melbourne, the crowds go wild. It's a luscious combination of lentils with celery and soy sauce, with mashed paneer cheese, and smothered on top with fluffy mashed potatoes and baked. I don't want to offend any born-again vegetarians out there, but this dish is a very meaty, non-meat preparation. Let's have a look at some of our lovely ingredients here for our vegetarian shepherd's pie. We're fresh out of vegetarian shepherds, so instead we're going to use homemade curd cheese from 2 litres of milk. Here's a lovely lump of homemade curd cheese. We're going to crumble this up. And over here we've got half a cup of milk that's going into the mashed potatoes. We've got a cup of diced celery. We've got 1 1/4 cups of brown lentils. These are the real meaty ingredients in our shepherd's pie. They're very, very wonderful when they're cooked up. We've got 2 tablespoons of olive oil, a teaspoon of yellow asafoetida powder. We've got 1/4 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper, 5 tablespoons of tamari or soy sauce. We've got 2 tablespoons of butter, a teaspoon of salt, 2 tablespoons of sour cream, and 3 tablespoons of chopped fresh parsley. And last but not least, we've got 6 large baking potatoes over here in the pot coming to the boil, or actually they're boiling quite comfortably here, in some water. We're going to take those out and mash them when the time arises. Now the first thing we're going to have to do in this recipe, after the potatoes are in and boiling, is to pop our lentils on. Let's take our lentils over to our water and slide them in to their pot of boiling water, like so. Now these lentils will take maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that to cook. They should be just soft and tender, but if you leave them too long you'll have a nice pot of lentil soup, so you do have to keep your eye on them. And our potatoes now are practically ready to mash. I'm going to have another close look at my potatoes here because I think they're, practically speaking, mashable. I think we could just about mash them now. Let's take them over to the sink and drain them. These are a nice batch of Idaho baking potatoes, very nice and soft and mealy, perfect for mashing. Strain off all that water. Make sure I don't steam up my glasses. It's a common kitchen phenomena. I wear contacts, except I'm always worried they'll fall in the soup or something, you know, so I have to tolerate these little things. Let's dump them in our bowl here, like so, and mash them. You know, it's actually interesting to note that potatoes are very rich in vitamin C. They contain 2% protein, and they're actually not high in calories, believe it or not. They're only high in calories when you smother them in butter and cream and things like that. Otherwise, they're very, very wonderful, balanced, nutritional food. Now, this mashed potato is going to be used for the topping on top of our shepherd's pie. And we're going to bake it in the oven, and it should be nice and golden brown on top when we're finished. This is really quite a stunning dish. Now, let's add the rest of our ingredients to our mashed potatoes here. Some milk. Got our butter. Waste not, want not. We've got our salt and our sour cream, like so. Now let's mash it all together to make a lovely batch of mashed potatoes. There's a nice creamy batch of mashed potatoes. Let's go and have a look at our lentils, and they should have come to the boil. They should be softening up pretty soon. Yes, they're going along quite nicely. Have a look. So while our lentils are cooking, let's saute our celery in our frying pan over here. Turn on our flame, like so. Let's add our olive oil to our pan here. Our asafoetida. Black pepper. Gotta get closer. Saute those lovely things together. Beautiful aroma here. One of my favourite combinations, asafoetida and olive oil. Quite wonderful. And our celery. And let's give it a nice stir around. Beautiful aroma here as the celery combines with the asafoetida and the olive oil. Wonderful flavour. Actually, it's very reminiscent of onions, although there's no onions in the pan at all. So I'm going to turn down the flame here on our back burner and cook our celery ever so slowly to get those lovely flavours mingling in. And I'll stir this every now and again and keep a check on my lentils. So in about 10 minutes time, if you come back, everything should be ready to go. Our celery is looking beautiful, nice and bright and green, and it's starting to stick a bit on the bottom, which is good. It gives us an extra dimension of flavour. I'm going to turn the flame off there, and let's take a look at our lentils. They should be done too. They're simmering nicely. Let's give them a little squeeze. They're lentil as anything. Have a close look. So they're butter soft. I'm going to take them over to the sink and drain them, but I'm not going to throw away the delicious lentil water. I'm going to keep that for a soup stock. So I have a colander here, but underneath my colander is a pot to catch all that delicious juice. So let's strain off some of that precious liquid. Keep every drop. Now notice these lentils, they're still intact. They haven't turned into a lentil soup. But if you take any one of those lentils and squeeze it between your fingers, you'll notice it's soft and buttery, like so. See that? So let's take our lentils over to our bowl over here and mash them. A lot of mashing going on in this one. You really work off a few calories cooking vegetarian shepherd's pie. I think that's mashed enough. Let's get our lovely batch of homemade curd here and crumble it into our lentils, like so. Break off little pieces and crumble them in. Nice and soft and cheesy. It's a protein-packed combination. I'm just going to wipe my hands here, and we're going to add our soy sauce now. Lovely rich flavour. Now, take my masher away. Bring in my spoon over here and gently fold all this in together, trying not to break the curd up completely, but just allowing little chunks of curd to remain until we have our vegetarian version of you-know-what. Let's add our celery before we mix it up any further. lovely celery is sautéed to perfection with a wonderful aroma of lovely things. We're going to fold this in. Well, look, to be quite honest with you, this doesn't get 10 out of 10 for appearance, but the taste more than makes up for it. I think that's mixed enough. What I'm going to do now is to pop everything into our casserole dish. Let's just make room here for the casserole dish. Let's spoon our ingredients into our casserole dish, at least the ingredients for the base of the pie, and then we're going to smother them, or smother it, with the mashed potatoes on top. There we go. Last of it. So let's spread that all inside, nice and evenly. And let's put our mashed potatoes on top, like so. Lovely buttery mashed potatoes. Let's spread it out nice and evenly, like so. Now we're going to grab a fork and run it down from end to end like this and make those lovely smooth patterns. Now, isn't that attractive? Now we're going to bake it in the oven for about half an hour on 230 Celsius or 450 Fahrenheit. And by then it should be nice and golden brown on top. Well, excuse me, but I've got a lot of cleaning up to do. This place is a mess. So I'll see you then. Well, here we are in a nice clean kitchen. We've been doing a bit of a spring clean while you've been gone. I think our shepherd's pie is just about done. It's been half an hour. Let's have a look. Ooh, it's looking lovely. Hot. Hot as anything. Oh. There it is. Look at that. Nice and golden brown on top. A hearty batch of vegetarian shepherd's pie with a sprinkle of parsley. Fit for a king. Here's a colourful and fresh-tasting salad that's crunchy and veritably rippling with nutrition. It's a steamed cauliflower salad with a green mayonnaise. Tight little buds of cauliflower are steamed to perfection and then smothered with a beautifully green-coloured mayonnaise, which is flavoured with fresh herbs. It's very, very wonderful and very, very simple to prepare. Let's have a look at these very tasty ingredients we've got over here. We've got a large cauliflower that's been broken into little flowerets. We're going to be using a large bunch of fresh watercress, a few little fresh spinach leaves. We're going to be using a little bit of chopped herb. You can either use parsley, tarragon or chervil for this dish. I haven't quite decided which to use yet. That's also lovely. We've got a teaspoon of lemon juice and a cup of eggless mayonnaise. Very yummy ingredients. The first thing we're going to do is to take the lid off our pot here and plunge our cauliflowers into our boiling water. There's one hint that you might like to know about boiling cauliflowers. If you've ever found that your cauliflowers look a little less than white after you take them out of the water, or even before you put them in the water, then you can try acidulating the water. That means put a little lemon juice in the water, and this makes the cauliflower either stay as white as it was when it went in, or even get a little whiter. So let's add our lemon juice at this point. I've got enough here for about 4 or 5 litres of water, and let's plunge in our lovely crisp cauliflower. Let's push them under a little bit. Let's pop our lid on, bring our cauliflowers back to the boil and cook them for a couple of minutes until they're nicely done. A word or two about cauliflower. Now when you're selecting cauliflower, you should take heed of a few little pointers. Get a hold of cauliflowers that have very tight buds and has very, very firm white flesh. Cauliflowers are also rich in folic acid, which is one of the B vitamins. So they're very nutritious. Let's have a look at our watercress too while we're at it. This is another lovely tasty herbal ingredient. I'm going to use the stalks and the leaves today to produce the lovely green effect in the mayonnaise. Watercress are packed with vitamin A, iron and vitamin C, and they're also very delicious. And of course on our herbal plate here, as I said, I've got a choice of 3 here. This is chervil, very nice culinary herb. This is tarragon, and this I'm sure you're familiar with, is parsley. I think I'm going to use my tarragon today. This is the French version of tarragon. There's Russian and French. I prefer the French. It has a less coarser flavour. Tarragon's wonderful. It has a tangy, bittersweet flavour, and it's one of the 4 fine herbs in French culinary tradition. So what we're going to do with our tarragon now is chop it up like so, just a little bit. This is also going to supply some of the lovely green colour in our green mayonnaise. I'm going to grab a hold of my watercress here and just break off the little ends, put them aside, and chop them up coarsely, and they're going to be plunged into our vat of boiling water. Well, that's our watercress done. So our watercress is ready to go, our tarragon is ready to go, and I think our cauliflower is also ready to go. Let's have a little peek at them, shall we? They're just nice and tender, so I'm going to take them out right now. Pop them into our colander, like so. Now, let's leave our water on at this stage because we want to boil it up again for our spinach and watercress. We're going to plunge them in and blanch them a little bit and then put them in our food processor. Meanwhile, I'm going to take my cauliflower over to the sink and I'm going to rinse it very thoroughly. This is called refreshing your cauliflowers. I guess if I was boiled up in a pot of water, I'd need something like this. Okay, they're rinsed enough. Let's leave them there. Let's go over and plunge our lettuce leaves and watercress into our water, which is now come back to the boil. Spinach, and followed closely behind by watercress. Now, we only want to blanch these vegetables, just maybe a minute or 2 at the maximum. Don't go away and do something else at this time. See that lovely green colour which is emerging? This is coming from the blanching process. We're going to blend all this up together and use that puree as the colouring agent in the mayonnaise. Very, very natural food colouring process here. Actually, I think these are ready to come out right now. So, give them a good shake. Pop them on our plate over here. Okay, a couple more bits hanging on the edge. Let's turn off our water. Now we're going to plunge our watercress into our food processor. Watercress and spinach, they've become merged there. And our tarragon, which has been patiently waiting on the bench for us to pop it in the food processor. So, on with the lid. Here we go. I think it's ready to come out. Let's take our lovely green puree out of here and transfer it to our bowl. Like so. Let's add our lemon juice and our lovely batch of homemade mayonnaise. Now let's mix all this up. Now it's time to put it all together. In the fridge I've got a nice bowl of lettuce that I'm going to put my cauliflowers on top of. Like, I guess you could call it a bed of lettuce. And over in our sink we have our cauliflowers, which are well and truly drained by now. Let's place them on our bed of lettuce and smother them with a lovely batch of green mayonnaise. This is a very, very refreshing salad, and whenever I make this, people are very, very satisfied with the lovely crunchy pieces of cauliflower and their lovely, lovely green mayonnaise on top. Steamed cauliflower salad with green mayonnaise. Well, that's it for this edition of Cooking with Kurma. I do hope you'll enjoy preparing these dishes as much as I've enjoyed sharing them with you. Happy and healthy eating.